The alarm bells rang through the Kalari command center like thunder. Admiral Zethkar's 4 eyes snapped open as he floated in his rest chamber. The sound meant only one thing: something big was happening, something that needed his attention right now. He pushed himself out of the chamber and glided through the corridors of the massive space station. Other Kalari officers moved quickly past him, their tentacles wrapped around data tablets and communication devices. Everyone looked worried. "Report," Zethkar said as he entered the main command room. The room was huge, with screens covering every wall. Dozens of officers worked at their stations, their tentacles moving fast over the controls. Lieutenant Valana turned to face him. Her skin had turned a pale blue color, a sign of fear among the Kalari. "Admiral, we have detected an unknown object approaching from the outer rim. It's massive, sir, bigger than anything we have ever seen." Zethkar moved to the main viewing screen. The image showed a dot moving through space, but the numbers below it made his heart skip a beat. The object was 15 kilometers long. Their biggest warships were only 2 kilometers long. "How fast is it moving?" he asked. "That's the problem, sir," Valana said. "It's traveling at speeds that should be impossible. Our computers say it would need more energy than a small star to move that fast." Zethkar studied the data. In his 300 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The Kalari Confederation controlled this entire sector of space. They knew about every ship, every station, every piece of space dust bigger than a rock. Nothing this size could exist without them knowing about it. "Where did it come from?" he asked. "The galactic rim, sir. From the empty zone." The empty zone. Every spacefaring race knew about it. A huge area of space where nothing lived. No planets with life, no space stations, no ships, just empty darkness between the stars. The Kalari had sent probe ships there thousands of years ago. They found nothing but dead rocks and cold space. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," Zethkar ordered. "Tell them we have a situation." While his officers worked, Zethkar stared at the screen. The object kept moving toward them. It wasn't changing course. It wasn't slowing down. It was heading straight for the Nexus system, the most important system in this part of the galaxy. The Nexus system was where all the major races met to trade and talk. Billions of beings lived there. If this unknown object was hostile, the damage could be terrible. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're getting reports from other systems. They can see it too. The Vorthak Empire, the Crystal Collective, the Hive Worlds. Everyone is picking up the same readings." Zethkar nodded. At least they weren't alone in this. But that also meant the situation was even more serious. If all the major powers were seeing this object, it would cause panic across the galaxy. "Any response to our communication attempts?" he asked. "No, sir. We've tried every frequency, every language in our database. The object isn't responding to anything." A new voice spoke from behind him. "Maybe it can't hear us." Zethkar turned to see Dr. Cathara, the station's chief scientist. She was old even for a Kalari, and her skin had the deep purple color that came with age and wisdom. "What do you mean?" Zethkar asked. "Look at this data," she said, showing him her tablet. "The object's hull is made of some kind of material we've never seen before. It's not metal, not crystal, not any known substance. It might be blocking our signals." Zethkar studied the readings. The material seemed to change and shift as their sensors watched it. Sometimes it looked solid, other times it seemed to flow like liquid. "There's something else," Dr. Cathara said. "The energy readings don't match any known propulsion system. This isn't fusion power or antimatter. It's something completely different." "Could it be a natural phenomenon?" Zethkar asked. "Some kind of space creature or cosmic event?" Dr. Cathara shook her head. "No, sir. The object is too regular, too structured. Someone built this thing. The question is who?" Zethkar felt a chill run through his body. In all their history, the Kalari had never encountered a race more advanced than themselves. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Their technology was among the best. The idea that someone could build something beyond their understanding was terrifying. "How long until it reaches the Nexus system?" he asked. "At its current speed, 6 hours, Valana reported. 6 hours. Not much time to figure out what they were dealing with. "Send out the fleet," Zethkar ordered. "All available ships to the Nexus system. And get me a direct line to the other admirals." As his officers rushed to carry out his orders, Zethkar kept staring at the screen. The object continued its steady approach. It didn't change course when their ships moved to intercept it. It didn't slow down when more and more fleets appeared in its path. It just kept coming. Within 2 hours, the space around the Nexus system filled with warships. The Kalari fleet was there, along with ships from a dozen other races. Thousands of vessels formed a defensive line, their weapons charged and ready. But Zethkar couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a mistake. This object, and whatever it was, had crossed the entire galaxy to reach them. It had traveled through the empty zone, through space that should have been impossible to cross. If whoever built it wanted to destroy them, they probably had the power to do it. "Admiral," Velana called out, "we're getting a message from the Galactic Council. They want to speak with you." The main screen changed to show the council chamber. Representatives from 50 different races sat in their assigned seats. At the center was High Chancellor Morden, a tall, thin being with silver skin and large black eyes. "Admiral Zethkar," the Chancellor said, "what is your assessment of this situation?" Zethkar straightened up. "Chancellor, we are dealing with technology far beyond our current understanding. The object appears to be artificial, but we cannot determine its origin or purpose. Our attempts at communication have failed." "Could this be a weapon?" asked Ambassador Threshkar of the Vorthok Empire. His race was known for their military power, and he looked ready for a fight. "We don't know," Zethkar admitted, "but we must prepare for that possibility." "What about evacuation?" asked another ambassador. "Should we empty the Nexus system?" High Chancellor Morden considered this. "We cannot evacuate billions of beings in 6 hours. And if we run now, we show weakness to whatever is coming. We will stand and face this threat." Zethkar understood the Chancellor's reasoning, but he still felt worried. They were about to face something unknown, something that might be far more powerful than all their fleets combined. "Admiral," Dr. Cathara whispered to him, "I've been looking at our historical records. There are some old files you should see." "What kind of files?" he asked. "Ancient probe report from the empty zone. They mentioned finding something out there thousands of years ago, something that scared them enough to set up a quarantine." Zethkar felt his blood turn cold. A quarantine in the empty zone? He had never heard of such a thing. "Show me those files," he ordered. As Dr. Cathara began pulling up the ancient records, the object continued its approach. It was now close enough that their best telescopes could make out details. The ship, for it was clearly a ship, looked like nothing they had ever seen. It was smooth and flowing, like it had been grown rather than built. Strange lights moved along its hull in patterns that seemed almost alive. 2 hours until contact, Velana reported. Zethkar studied the ancient files on Dr. Cathara's tablet. The records were old and damaged, but he could make out enough to understand what had happened. Long ago, the galaxy's major powers had found something in the empty zone, something they considered dangerous enough to seal away. But what could be so dangerous that the entire galaxy had agreed to quarantine it? And why were there no records of this in the main historical files? "Admiral," another officer called out. "The object is slowing down." Zethkar looked up at the main screen. The massive ship was indeed reducing speed as it approached the Nexus system. That was either a good sign or a very bad one. "It's taking a position just outside the system," the officer continued. "Still no response to our communications. All ships maintain defensive positions," Zethkar ordered. "But do not fire unless fired upon." The tension in the command center was thick enough to cut with a blade. Everyone watched the screens, waiting to see what would happen next. The unknown ship hung in space like a sleeping giant, dark and silent. Then, without warning, every communication device in the fleet activated at once. A new signal came through, clear and strong. But it wasn't in any language they recognized. "Can you translate it?" Zethkar asked. Dr. Cathara worked frantically at her console. "It's not in our database, but the computer is trying to find patterns." She paused, her skin turning pale again. "Admiral, the signal structure, it matches references in those ancient files." Before Zethkar could ask what she meant, the signal changed. This time the words came through in perfect Kalari. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Indomitable. We come seeking dialogue with the galactic community. We have much to discuss." The command center fell completely silent. Every officer stared at the screen in shock. Earth. They had heard that name before in the oldest records. It was the name of a planet in the quarantine zone. But that was impossible. Nothing could have survived in that zone for thousands of years. The automatic defense systems would have destroyed anything that tried to leave. Unless, Zethkar realized with growing horror that the quarantine hadn't kept something in. It had kept everyone else out. And now, whatever had been growing and developing in that isolation for thousands of years had finally decided to come out. He looked at the massive ship on his screen and understood that everything was about to change. The galaxy had sealed away what they thought was a primitive, dangerous species. Now that species had returned, and they had clearly used their time wisely. "Admiral," Velana whispered. "What do we do?" Zethkar stared at the ship that dwarfed their entire fleet. "We listen," he said quietly, "and we hope they're in a talking mood." The United Earth ship Indomitable hung in space like a promise and a threat all at once. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, and they were no longer the primitive species that had been locked away so long ago. The real question was what they wanted and whether the galaxy would survive finding out. Dr. Vellani had spent her entire life studying the past. As the galaxy's leading xenoarchaeologist, she had explored the ruins of dead civilizations and uncovered secrets that most beings had forgotten. But nothing had prepared her for what she was reading now. The ancient files were scattered across a dozen different archives, hidden in the deepest vaults of various species' historical records. She had been collecting pieces for years, never understanding what they meant until now, until a ship calling itself United Earth Ship Indomitable had appeared from the quarantine zone. Her office on the research station orbiting Keth Prime was small but filled with artifacts from across the galaxy. Ancient crystals from the Vorthak homeworld sat next to metal tablets from the first Kalari colonies. But today, all her attention was focused on her computer screen and the story it was telling her. The first record came from the Kalari archives, dated over 3,000 years ago. It was a report from Probe Fleet Gamma 7, sent to explore the outer rim of the galaxy. Day 43 of exploration, the report began. We have discovered a system with several planets orbiting a yellow star. The third planet shows signs of life, sending detailed scans. Dr. Vellani scrolled down to read the full report. What she found made her skin crawl. The planet is a death world. Extreme weather patterns, dangerous radiation levels, and multiple extinction-level events occur regularly. Despite this, complex life has not only survived but thrived. Initial scans show a dominant species that has achieved primitive technology. The report continued with details that grew more disturbing. The dominant species, humans they called themselves, had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over. They waged constant wars against each other, yet somehow continued to advance technologically at an incredible rate. Most concerning, the report noted, is their rapid adaptation. In the time we have observed them, they have gone from using simple tools to splitting the atom. If this rate of advancement continues, they could pose a significant threat to galactic stability. Dr. Vellani found the next report in the Vorthak military archives. It was classified at the highest level, available only to their war council. The human species has achieved spaceflight, it read. They have established colonies on multiple worlds in their system, and show signs of developing faster than light travel. Recommendation: immediate military intervention before they can spread beyond their system. But there was a note attached from their chief strategist that made Dr. Vellani pause. Military intervention not recommended. Humans have shown a disturbing ability to reverse engineer any technology they encounter. 3 of our scout ships were captured. Within 1 local year, humans had not only copied our propulsion systems but improved upon them. Recommend quarantine instead. The Crystal Collective's records were even more detailed. Their crystalline minds could process information faster than most organic species, and they had spent considerable time studying humanity. Humans are unique among known species, their report stated. While most civilizations advance slowly and steadily, humans appear to thrive under pressure. The more dangerous their situation becomes, the faster they innovate. They have turned their planet's natural disasters into weapons. They use their star's radiation as a power source. They have learned to survive in environments that would kill most galactic species. More concerning is their unity. Despite obvious biological and cultural differences, they have managed to form a single planetary government. This is unprecedented among violent species. Usually, aggressive races destroy themselves before achieving unity. Humans appear to have used their aggression to unite against external threats. Dr. Vellani pulled up the next file, this one from the hive worlds. The insectoid species was known for their collective intelligence and careful planning. Proposal: complete containment of the human species, their document read. Establish automated defense platforms around their system. Prevent any human ships from leaving. Allow natural selection to take its course. Violent species typically destroy themselves within a few generations when confined. The vote had been unanimous across 53 different species. Humanity would be quarantined in their home system until they either destroyed themselves or evolved beyond their violent nature. Dr. Villani found the technical specifications for the quarantine system in another file. It was massive. Thousands of automated defense platforms equipped with weapons capable of destroying anything larger than a small asteroid. The platforms were powered by the human's own star, making them nearly impossible to shut down. Defense grid will remain active until human civilization either collapses or demonstrates 100 consecutive years of peaceful behavior. The final report stated, long-range monitoring will continue to ensure compliance. But as Dr. Villani dug deeper into the files, she found something that chilled her to the bone. The monitoring had stopped after only 50 years. Not because humans had become peaceful, but because something had happened to the monitoring stations. A brief report from a Kalari surveillance ship told the story. Long-range monitoring station Delta 7 has gone silent. Investigation shows the station has been completely dismantled. All equipment removed. No signs of weapons damage. Someone took it apart piece by piece. Similar reports followed. One by one, the monitoring stations disappeared. Not destroyed. Carefully taken apart and removed. Someone had been learning from them. Dr. Villani realized what had happened. The humans hadn't been contained by the quarantine. They had been given time to study galactic technology without interference. Every monitoring station, every piece of alien equipment in their system had become a classroom. She pulled up the oldest files she could find, from the very first contact with humanity. The details painted a picture of a species unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Human combat doctrine is highly unusual, noted a military analyst. They do not retreat when outnumbered. They do not surrender when defeat is certain. Instead, they adapt their tactics and continue fighting. In one observed conflict, human forces turned a losing battle into a victory by collapsing their own city on top of the enemy army. Humans appear to view death differently than other species, another report added. They regularly sacrifice themselves for strategic advantages. This makes them extremely difficult to fight, as normal psychological warfare has no effect. But it wasn't just their combat abilities that worried the ancient observers. It was their rapid technological development. In the span of one generation, humans went from using chemical rockets to developing fusion drives, a technical report noted. They have taken our most advanced technologies and found ways to improve them using primitive materials and techniques we never considered. Their approach to engineering is completely different from standard galactic practice, another file explained. Where we focus on efficiency and perfection, humans focus on adaptability and function. Their ships are crude by our standards, but they work in situations where our designs would fail. Dr. Villani found a personal log from a Kalari scientist who had studied humanity in secret. His words sent chills down her spine. I have been watching the humans for 10 years now, he wrote. What I have learned terrifies me. They are not just another violent species. They are something new, something dangerous. They take the worst possible situations and turn them into advantages. They learn from every defeat. They adapt to every challenge. Most frightening of all, they are getting smarter, not just technologically but strategically. They know we are watching them. They know about the quarantine, and they are planning something. The log was dated 2,900 years ago. The scientist's final entry was ominous. I believe we have made a terrible mistake. We tried to contain a species that grows stronger under pressure. We may have just given them time to become something that can challenge the entire galaxy. Dr. Villani sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Everything she had read pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity hadn't been destroyed by the quarantine. They had used it as protection while they developed technologies that the galaxy couldn't even understand. She pulled up the current sensor readings from the human ship, the Indomitable. The energy signatures were completely unlike anything in the galactic database. The hull material seemed to shift and change as their sensors watched it. The propulsion system violated several known laws of physics. Humanity had spent 3,000 years in isolation, studying galactic technology and developing their own improvements. They had taken the lessons of their quarantine and turned them into weapons that the galaxy had never imagined. Dr. Villani thought about the name of their ship, Indomitable. It meant unable to be defeated. The humans had chosen that name very carefully. She opened a new file and began typing her report. The galaxy needed to understand what they were dealing with. This wasn't first contact with a new species. This was the return of a species that the galaxy had tried to forget. Humanity represents a fundamental threat to galactic stability, she wrote. Not because they are violent, but because they are adaptable. They thrive under pressure. They learn from their enemies. They turn defeats into victories. The quarantine was supposed to contain them until they destroyed themselves. Instead, we gave them 3,000 years to study our technology, understand our weaknesses, and develop countermeasures to everything we might use against them. The ship approaching the Nexus system is not just a vessel. It is a statement. Humanity is announcing that they have not only survived our attempt to contain them, but that they have grown beyond our ability to control them. Dr. Villani paused in her writing as a new thought occurred to her. If humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment, they wouldn't send just one ship. The Indomitable might be their first contact vessel, but it wouldn't be their only one. She pulled up the sensor data again and studied it more carefully. The ship's energy signatures were massive, but there were subtle variations in the readings. Fluctuations that might indicate other vessels nearby, using some kind of stealth technology. The more she studied the data, the more convinced she became. Humanity hadn't sent one ship to make first contact. They had sent a fleet. The Indomitable was just the one they wanted the galaxy to see. Dr. Villani finished her report with a warning that she hoped the galactic leaders would understand. We are not dealing with a primitive species seeking acceptance into galactic civilization. We are facing a species that has spent 3 millennia preparing for this moment. They know everything about us and we know nothing about them. The galaxy created its own greatest threat by trying to contain humanity. Now we must face the consequences of that decision. She sent the report to every major government in the galaxy and sat back to wait. Soon everyone would understand what she had figured out. The humans weren't coming to join galactic civilization. They were coming to judge it. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and looked out at the stars. After 3,000 years, humanity was finally returning to the galaxy. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a child, but now that it was here, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They were the best humanity had to offer: engineers, scientists, diplomats, and soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this mission. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Commander Park from the navigation station, "we're receiving multiple signals from alien vessels. Looks like they're trying to communicate with us." Sarah nodded. "Put it on the main screen, but don't respond yet. Let them see us first." The main viewing screen showed the space ahead of them. Thousands of alien ships filled the area around the Nexus system. Their weapons powered and ready. Sarah had expected this reaction. After all, humanity was returning from a quarantine that was supposed to last forever. "Impressive," said Commander Torres, the ship's second in command. "They mobilized their entire fleet in just a few hours." "They're scared," Sarah replied. "And they have good reason to be." The Indomitable was a masterpiece of human engineering. 15 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide, it was the largest ship humanity had ever built. But size wasn't what made it special. The ship was alive in ways that alien technology couldn't understand. The hull was made of programmable matter, millions of tiny machines that could reshape themselves for any purpose. The ship could repair damage instantly, adapt to new threats, and even change its basic structure if needed. It was powered by controlled micro-singularities that provided nearly unlimited energy. But most importantly, it was built with 3,000 years of reverse-engineered alien technology. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure had been designed to counter what the galaxy might use against them. "Status report," Sarah ordered. "All systems operating perfectly," reported Chief Engineer Martinez. "The Singularity Core is stable, adaptive armor is at full strength, and all weapon systems are ready. Communications are standing by," added Lieutenant Singh. "We're monitoring over 3,000 different frequencies." The aliens are using every language and communication method in their database to try to reach us. Sensor readings show approximately 4,000 alien vessels in defensive positions, continued Lieutenant Commander Park. Multiple species represented, including what appear to be their most advanced warships. Sarah studied the tactical display. The alien fleet was impressive by their standards, but she knew it wouldn't be enough if humanity had come for war. Fortunately, that wasn't why they were here. Dr. Kim, are you ready for first contact protocols? She asked. Dr. Kim, the ship's chief xenolinguist, nodded. We've been monitoring their communications for the past 6 hours. I've identified the primary languages and updated our translation systems. We can communicate with any species in that fleet. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. Everything they had worked for over 3 millennia came down to the next few minutes. Tell me about our escort, she said. Commander Torres smiled. Right on schedule. The Defiant, Resolute, and Unconquerable are maintaining stealth positions around the system. If this goes badly, we'll have backup, Sarah nodded. The 3 other Titan-class ships were invisible to alien sensors, using technology that humanity had developed during their isolation. But she hoped they wouldn't be needed. This mission was about diplomacy, not warfare. Captain, Lieutenant Singh called out, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the alien fleet. They're powering up their weapons. Expected, Sarah replied calmly. They don't know our intentions. From their perspective, we're an unknown threat that appeared from nowhere. She thought about the journey that had brought them here. 3,000 years ago, humanity had been a young species, barely reaching beyond their home planet. Then the aliens had come, not to make contact, but to study them like laboratory animals. The early human governments had tried to communicate with the alien probes, but there had been no response. Instead, massive defense platforms had appeared around their solar system, trapping them inside. The message was clear. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed into the galaxy. At first, there had been panic. Some humans wanted to try to break through the quarantine by force. Others believed they should focus on proving they were peaceful. But Sarah's ancestors had chosen a different path. If the galaxy thought humanity was dangerous, they would use that time to become truly dangerous. If they were going to be treated as a threat, they would make sure they could back up that reputation. The isolation had forced humanity to unite in ways that would have been impossible otherwise. When faced with a common external threat, all the old divisions between nations and cultures had faded away. Earth became truly united for the first time in its history, but it was the alien technology that changed everything. Every probe that entered their system, every monitoring station that watched them, humanity studied them all. They learned how alien ships worked, how their weapons functioned, how their communications operated. More importantly, they learned how to improve on alien designs. Where alien engineers focused on efficiency and elegance, humans focused on adaptability and power. Their ships might not have been as beautiful as alien vessels, but they were far more effective. Captain, Dr. Kim said, I'm reading emotional stress patterns in the alien communications. They're definitely afraid of us. Sarah wasn't surprised. The aliens had created their own worst nightmare. They had given humanity 3,000 years to prepare for this moment, and humanity had used every day of that time wisely. Begin first contact protocol, Sarah ordered. Open a channel on all frequencies. The bridge fell silent as Lieutenant Singh prepared the communication system. This would be the first time in 3 millennia that a human voice had spoken to the galaxy. Channel open, Captain, Singh reported. Sarah stepped forward and spoke clearly and calmly. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Indomitable. We come seeking dialogue with the galactic community. We have much to discuss. The response was immediate. Dozens of alien voices began speaking at once, their words overlapping and competing for attention. Sarah could hear fear, confusion, and anger in their voices. Dr. Kim, filter the communications. Find me whoever's in charge, she ordered. After a few moments, Dr. Kim nodded. I have Admiral Zethkar of the Kalari Confederation. He appears to be the fleet commander. Put him through. The main screen changed to show an alien face with 4 eyes and tentacle-like appendages. The creature's skin was pale with fear, but its voice was steady. This is Admiral Zethkar, the alien said. You claim to be from Earth. That system has been under quarantine for 3,000 years. The quarantine was broken long ago, Sarah replied. Humanity has been expanding beyond our original system for over 2 millennia. We have simply chosen not to make contact until now. She could see the shock on the alien admiral's face. The idea that humans had been moving freely through the galaxy without their knowledge clearly terrified him. What do you want? Zethkar asked. Sarah considered her words carefully. This was the moment that would determine everything that followed. We want an accounting, she said finally. 3,000 years ago, your people decided that humanity was too dangerous to join galactic civilization. You trapped us in our home system and left us to die. We survived and we grew strong. Now we want to know why. You were observed to be a violent and unpredictable species, Zethkar replied. The quarantine was for the safety of all galactic civilizations. Including yourselves, Sarah said. You were afraid of us. Afraid of what we might become. Well, Admiral, we have become exactly what you feared. The question now is what we do about it. She gestured to Commander Torres, who activated the ship's external displays. The Indomitable's hull began to glow as millions of tiny machines rearranged themselves into new patterns. Weapons that had been hidden became visible. Energy readings that had been masked suddenly appeared on alien sensors. The reaction from the alien fleet was immediate. Ships began backing away as their sensors registered energy levels that should have been impossible. The Indomitable was generating more power than some small stars. This is what 3,000 years of isolation produced, Sarah continued. We took your technology and made it better. We learned from your mistakes and found solutions you never imagined. We became everything you were afraid we might become. Are you threatening us? Zethkar asked, his voice shaking. I'm explaining the situation, Sarah replied. Humanity is no longer confined to one system. We have colonies throughout the galaxy. We have ships that your sensors cannot detect. We have weapons that your shields cannot stop. We are everything you tried to prevent us from becoming. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. But we are not here for conquest. We are here for justice. Commander Torres activated another display showing the locations of human colonies throughout the galaxy. Hundreds of red dots appeared on the tactical screen, each representing a thriving human settlement that had been established without the galaxy's knowledge. We have been watching you, Sarah said, learning about your civilizations, studying your cultures, understanding your strengths and weaknesses. We know everything about you while you know nothing about us. The alien fleet was in chaos now. Ships were frantically communicating with each other, trying to understand how humans could have spread so far without being detected. What do you want from us? Zethkar asked again. Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. We want you to remember this moment, Admiral. Remember that you had the chance to welcome humanity into the galaxy peacefully. Instead, you chose fear and isolation. You created your own greatest threat. The galaxy abandoned us when we needed guidance. You left us alone when we could have been allies. Now you must deal with the consequences of that choice. The bridge crew watched in silence as Sarah delivered humanity's message to the galaxy. This wasn't a request for membership in galactic civilization. It was a statement of fact. Humanity had returned, and they were no longer the primitive species that had been quarantined so long ago. We will establish a dialogue, Sarah continued, but it will be on our terms, not yours. Humanity has earned the right to be treated as equals, not as subjects to be studied and contained. She turned to Lieutenant Singh. End transmission. The communication channel closed, leaving the alien fleet to process what they had just learned. Humanity was back, and they were everything the galaxy had feared they would become. Sarah looked out at the thousands of alien ships surrounding them. Each one represented a civilization that had participated in humanity's isolation. But now the balance of power had shifted. Captain, Commander Torres said quietly. What happens now? Sarah watched as the alien ships began to pull back, maintaining their defensive positions but clearly uncertain about how to proceed. Now we wait, she said. We've given them a lot to think about. They need time to understand that the galaxy has changed, and they need to decide how they want to deal with that change. The Indomitable hung in space like a monument to human determination. It was proof that humanity could not be contained, could not be stopped, and would not be ignored. The galaxy had tried to quarantine humanity's potential. Instead, they had given it time to grow into something beyond their wildest nightmares. Now they would have to live with the consequences of that decision. High Chancellor Morden had lived for over 500 years. but he had never faced a crisis like this. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the human ship's arrival, and representatives from across the galaxy were arguing with a panic he had never seen before. The council chamber was in chaos. Ambassadors shouted at each other in dozens of languages, while their translation devices struggled to keep up. Some demanded immediate military action. Others called for peaceful negotiations. A few had already left to prepare their homeworlds for war. "Order," Morden called out, his voice enhanced by the chamber's amplification system. "We will have order in this chamber." Slowly, the noise died down. Representatives took their seats, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Everyone knew that the decisions made in the next few hours would determine the future of galactic civilization. "We have all seen the reports," Morden began. "The human vessel has demonstrated capabilities far beyond our current understanding. They claim to have colonies throughout the galaxy, established without our knowledge. They demand what they call an accounting for the quarantine that was imposed on their species 3,000 years ago." Ambassador Threshkar of the Vorthak Empire stood up. His people were the galaxy's most powerful military force, and his scarred face showed years of combat experience. "Chancellor, this is clearly a threat to galactic security," he said. "These humans have violated the quarantine and spread their violent culture across the galaxy. We must respond with force before they can consolidate their position." "And how do you propose we do that?" asked Ambassador Kelatara of the Crystal Collective. Her crystalline form sparkled with agitation. "Our sensors can barely track their one visible ship. They claim to have hundreds more that we cannot detect. A military response could trigger a war we cannot win." Dr. Villani's report had been distributed to all council members, and its contents had shaken even the most confident military leaders. The humans had spent 3 millennia studying galactic technology and developing countermeasures. They knew every weakness, every tactical doctrine, every strategic limitation of their potential enemies. "Perhaps we should consider their demands," suggested Ambassador Yithvar of the Peaceful Traders Coalition. "They have not attacked us. They are requesting dialogue. Maybe we can reach a peaceful solution." Threshkar slammed his fist on his desk. "Dialogue with a species that has been deceiving us for thousands of years? They have been watching us, studying us, preparing to strike. This is not a diplomatic mission. It is reconnaissance for an invasion." Morden studied the tactical displays showing the human ship. The Indomitable continued to hold position outside the Nexus system, surrounded by thousands of alien vessels. It had made no aggressive moves, but its very presence was destabilizing the entire galaxy. "We need more information," Morden said. "I am ordering a direct communication with the human captain. We will hear what they have to say before making any decisions." The main viewing screen activated, showing the bridge of the human ship. Captain Sarah Chen appeared, looking calm and confident despite being surrounded by hostile forces. Her uniform was simple but well made, and her bearing suggested military training. "Chancellor," she said with a slight nod, "thank you for agreeing to speak with us." "Captain Chen," Morden replied, "you have caused quite a disturbance with your arrival. Your ship appears to violate several laws of physics, and you claim to represent a species that has been under quarantine for 3 millennia. I think some explanation is in order." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm happy to explain, Chancellor. 3,000 years ago, your predecessor civilizations decided that humanity was too dangerous to join the galactic community. You trapped us in our home system and left us to die or evolve beyond our violent nature. The quarantine was a defensive measure," Morden said. "Early observations of your species showed extreme aggression and rapid technological advancement. The galactic community determined that contact would be dangerous for all involved. Without ever attempting to communicate with us," Sarah pointed out, "without offering guidance, education, or assistance, you simply decided we were too dangerous and locked us away." The accusation hung in the air like a weapon around the council chamber. Representatives shifted uncomfortably. Most of them had access to the historical records and knew that humanity's assessment was correct. "What is your purpose here?" Morden asked, trying to regain control of the conversation. Sarah activated a display behind her, showing a star map with hundreds of red markers scattered across the galaxy. "This shows the current extent of human civilization, Chancellor. We have been expanding for over 2,000 years, establishing colonies and research stations throughout what you consider your territory." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. The idea that humans had been operating freely in their space without their knowledge was terrifying. "You violated the quarantine," Threshkar accused. "Those automated defense platforms were designed to prevent exactly this kind of expansion." "The defense platforms were dismantled over 2 millennia ago," Sarah replied calmly. "We studied their technology, improved upon their designs, and incorporated their components into our own ships. They were quite educational." She activated another display showing technical schematics that made several ambassadors gasp in recognition. The humans had not only copied galactic technology, they had made it better. "Every probe ship you sent to monitor us became a source of new knowledge," Sarah continued. "Every defense platform taught us something about your capabilities. Every piece of alien technology in our system was reverse-engineered and improved. You gave us the tools we needed to surpass you." Dr. Cathara, the Kalari scientist, leaned forward in her seat. "How is your advancement possible?" "Our projections suggested that isolated species typically stagnate or destroy themselves." "You misunderstood human nature," Sarah replied. "We don't stagnate under pressure, we thrive. You gave us a common enemy and unlimited time to prepare. The result was the complete unification of our species and the rapid advancement of our technology." She gestured to her ship. "The Indomitable represents 3,000 years of human engineering focused on a single goal, proving that we could not be contained. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure was designed to counter what we learned about galactic capabilities." "What do you want from us?" Morden asked. Sarah's expression hardened. "We want an accounting, Chancellor. We want to know why the galaxy decided that an entire species should be imprisoned without trial. We want to understand why you chose fear over communication, isolation over education." "And then what?" Threshkar demanded. "What happens after you get your answers?" "That depends on those answers," Sarah replied, "and on how the galaxy chooses to respond to humanity's return." The threat was subtle but clear. Humanity was offering the galaxy a choice, but the alternatives were unspoken. Morden understood that they were at a crossroads. The humans clearly had the capability to enforce their will if negotiations failed, but they were offering dialogue instead of demanding surrender. "What would a peaceful resolution look like?" he asked. Sarah considered the question carefully. "Recognition of humanity's sovereignty over our established territories, formal acknowledgement that the quarantine was a mistake, and guarantees that such actions will never be taken against any species again." "And if we refuse?" Threshkar asked. Sarah's smile returned, cold and dangerous. "Then you will learn why your ancestors were so afraid of us." To demonstrate her point, she activated the Indomitable's external displays. The ship's hull began to shift and change, revealing weapon systems that alien sensors had been unable to detect. Energy readings spiked to levels that shouldn't have been possible, but more frightening was what happened next. Space around the ship began to shimmer, and 3 more massive vessels appeared as if materializing from nothing. The Defiant, Resolute, and Unconquerable took positions around the Indomitable, their own weapon systems coming online. The alien fleet immediately went to full alert, but their tactical officers were reporting impossible readings. The 4 human ships were generating more combined firepower than the entire galactic fleet surrounding them. "As you can see," Sarah said calmly, "we didn't come alone. These 4 ships represent just a small fraction of humanity's current military capabilities. We have learned much during our isolation." Ambassador Kelatara spoke up, her crystalline voice shaking with fear. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough," Sarah replied simply. The simplicity of that answer was more terrifying than any detailed threat could have been. It suggested resources and capabilities that the galaxy couldn't even comprehend. "However," Sarah continued, "we are not here as conquerors. We are here as equals demanding recognition. Humanity has earned the right to be treated with respect, not fear." She deactivated the weapon displays, and the 4 ships began to power down their most threatening systems. The message was clear. They could destroy the entire galactic fleet if they chose to, but they preferred not to. "We will give you time to consider our position," Sarah said. "But understand that humanity will no longer accept being treated as a threat to be contained. We have grown beyond your ability to control us." The communication channel closed, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The representatives stared at the tactical displays showing the 4 human ships, each one capable of challenging their entire civilization. "What do we do?" whispered Ambassador Yithvar. Morden looked around the chamber at the frightened faces of the galaxy's leaders. 3,000 years ago, their predecessors had made a decision based on fear. Now they had to live with the consequences of that choice. "We learn," he said finally. "We learn that fear and isolation create the very threats we seek to prevent. And we hope that humanity is more merciful than we were." Outside the station, the 4 human ships hung in space like monuments to the galaxy's greatest mistake. They were proof that trying to contain a species based on fear only made them stronger. The galaxy had created its own greatest challenge. Now they would have to find a way to live with what they had made. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human equality was about to begin, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. 6 months had passed since the Indomitable's arrival at the Nexus system. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, the first joint human-alien research facility ever built. Through the massive viewing windows, she could see ships from dozens of different species working together in ways that would have been impossible just a year ago. The negotiations had been long and difficult. Many species had wanted to fight rather than accept humanity's demands. Others had tried to maintain the old quarantine systems. But in the end, practical reality had won over pride and fear. Dr. Kim approached her, carrying a data tablet filled with the day's reports. As the station's diplomatic coordinator, he had been working around the clock to manage the complex relationships between species that had never cooperated before. "The morning briefings are ready, Captain," he said. "We've had some interesting developments." Sarah took the tablet and reviewed the information. Construction reports from joint engineering projects, scientific discoveries from mixed species research teams, and diplomatic updates from across the galaxy. It was the kind of cooperation that the galaxy had never seen before. "How are the children adapting?" Sarah asked. Dr. Kim smiled. "Better than their parents, honestly. Yesterday I watched a human child teach a young Kalari how to play chess while learning to count in tentacle speak. The language barriers don't seem to matter much to them. The education program had been Sarah's idea. If humanity was going to build a lasting peace with the galaxy, it had to start with the next generation. Children from various species were learning together on Harmony Station, discovering that their differences were less important than their similarities. "Any word from Earth?" Sarah asked. "President Martinez sends her regards," Dr. Kim replied. "The Expansion Council has approved 12 new joint colony projects. It seems everyone wants to work with human engineers these days." Sarah wasn't surprised. Human technology had proven to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Where alien engineering focused on perfection and efficiency, human designs prioritized adaptability and problem-solving. The combination of human innovation with alien knowledge was producing breakthroughs that neither side could have achieved alone. Commander Torres joined them at the observation window. "Captain, the morning's demonstration went well. The Crystal Collective engineers are amazed by our adaptive armor technology." "And what did we learn from them?" Sarah asked. "Their crystalline data storage methods are incredible," Torres replied. "They can store the equivalent of our entire database in something the size of a grain of sand. Dr. Martinez thinks we can combine it with our quantum computing systems to create something revolutionary." This was exactly what Sarah had hoped for. Instead of the galaxy fearing human advancement, they were embracing it. The combination of human adaptability with alien expertise was creating technologies that benefited everyone. Captain Chen to the main conference room came an announcement over the station's communication system. The Galactic Council representatives have arrived. Sarah handed the tablet back to Dr. Kim and straightened her uniform. Today's meeting would determine the future of human-galactic relations for generations to come. The conference room was filled with representatives from over 30 different species. High Chancellor Morden sat at the head of the table, looking much more relaxed than he had during their first meeting. Around him, ambassadors and scientists from across the galaxy waited for the proceedings to begin. Captain Chen, Morden said as she entered, "Thank you for joining us. I believe you'll be pleased with what we have to discuss today." Sarah took her seat across from the Chancellor. The past 6 months had transformed their relationship from adversaries to cautious partners. The galaxy was slowly learning that humanity's strength came not from aggression, but from their refusal to give up in the face of impossible challenges. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision," Morden announced. "We are formally recognizing the Human Colonial Collective as a sovereign entity, with full rights and privileges within galactic civilization." Around the table, various ambassadors nodded their agreement. It had taken months of negotiation, but the galaxy had finally accepted that humanity could not be contained or controlled. Furthermore, Morden continued, "We are establishing the Harmony Accords, a new framework for interspecies cooperation based on the principles developed here at this station." Ambassador Threshkar of the Vorthok Empire stood up. The warrior had been one of humanity's strongest opponents, but even he had been won over by the results of human-alien cooperation. "The military applications alone justify this partnership," he said. "Human tactical doctrine combined with our manufacturing capabilities has produced defensive systems that could protect the entire galaxy from external threats." External threats. Sarah knew what he was referring to. Long-range sensors had detected signs of activity beyond the galactic rim, something that might be approaching from the void between galaxies. The old rivalry between galactic species seemed insignificant compared to what might be coming. Dr. Cathera activated a holographic display showing the station's recent achievements. In just 6 months, joint human-alien research teams have made advances that our separate civilizations might have taken centuries to achieve. Independently, the display showed new propulsion systems that combined human adaptive engineering with alien power sources, medical technologies that merged human surgical techniques with alien biological knowledge, communication systems that could translate not just languages, but entire ways of thinking. Most importantly, Dr. Cathara continued, "We have proven that cooperation produces better results than isolation. The humans were right. The quarantine was not just morally wrong, it was strategically foolish." Sarah appreciated the admission, but she was more interested in the future than the past. "What about the other isolated species?" she asked. The question caused some uncomfortable shifting around the table. Humanity had not been the only species subjected to quarantine over the millennia. There were at least 3 other civilizations currently sealed away in their home systems. The isolation protocol is being formally abolished, Morden announced. All quarantined species will be offered the opportunity to join galactic civilization through the Harmony Accords framework. It was a complete reversal of thousands of years of galactic policy. Instead of isolating potentially dangerous species, they would be integrated through cooperation and mutual benefit. Ambassador Yithvar of the Peaceful Traders Coalition spoke up. The economic benefits alone justify this change. Human colonies are requesting trade partnerships faster than we can process them. Their resource extraction methods are incredibly efficient. Sarah smiled at that. Humans had learned to thrive on worlds that other species considered uninhabitable. Death worlds, frozen planets, radioactive systems all became viable colony sites with human engineering and determination. There is one more matter to discuss, Morden said, his expression becoming serious. The approaching anomaly from beyond the galaxy. The holographic display changed to show long-range sensor data. Something massive was moving through the void between galaxies headed in their direction. It would take several years to arrive, but when it did, it would dwarf anything the galaxy had ever seen. Our combined sensor networks have determined that the object is artificial, Dr. Cathara reported. It appears to be some kind of vessel or station, but its energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. How large? Sarah asked. Conservative estimates put it at over 1,000 kilometers in diameter, Dr. Cathara replied. Possibly much larger. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. Something that size could only belong to a civilization far more advanced than anything in their galaxy. This is why we need humanity, Threshkar said bluntly. Your species has experience dealing with impossible challenges. You find ways to win fights that cannot be won. Sarah understood the real reason behind the Galactic Council's change of heart. They weren't just recognizing humanity's rights. They were recruiting them for the greatest challenge the galaxy had ever faced. What do you want from us? She asked. Partnership, Morden replied. Real partnership. We want human engineers working with our best scientists. We want human tactical expertise combined with our military resources. We want human determination guiding our response to whatever is coming. It was exactly what Sarah had hoped for, but not how she had expected to achieve it. Humanity was being welcomed into galactic civilization, not despite their dangerous reputation, but because of it. The Indomitable will remain as humanity's flagship in the Joint Defense Fleet, she announced. But we'll need more ships. Many more. Already in production, Commander Torres reported. The shipyards at New Terra are working around the clock. We'll have 50 Titan-class vessels ready within 2 years. And we are contributing our own resources, added Ambassador Kelladara. Crystal Collective manufacturing capabilities are being integrated with human designs. The resulting vessels should be impressive. Sarah looked around the table at the faces of beings who had once considered humanity too dangerous to exist. Now they were betting their civilization's survival on human ingenuity and determination. There's something you should know, she said. The approaching object, it's not the first of its kind. The statement caused immediate concern around the table. What do you mean? Morden asked. Human long-range exploration has detected similar objects in other galactic clusters, Sarah explained. Whatever this is, it's part of something much larger. A civilization that spans multiple galaxies. The implications were staggering. They weren't just facing a single threat, but potentially an entire intergalactic empire. This changes everything, whispered Ambassador Yithvar. No, Sarah replied firmly. This confirms everything. The galaxy needs to be united if it's going to survive what's coming. The old divisions between species, the old fears and prejudices, they're luxuries we can't afford anymore. She stood up and activated her own holographic display, showing the current extent of human-alien cooperation. 6 months ago, you were afraid of humanity. Today, we're working together to solve problems that none of us could handle alone. In 2 years, when that object arrives, we'll be ready for it. And if we're not? Dr. Keithara asked. Sarah's smile was confident and slightly dangerous. Then we'll do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We'll adapt, we'll innovate, and we'll find a way to win. The meeting concluded with formal signing of the Harmony Accords. As representatives from across the galaxy added their signatures to the historic document, Sarah looked out at the stars and thought about the journey that had brought them here. 3,000 years ago, the galaxy had tried to contain humanity out of fear. Instead, they had created the very thing they needed most, a species that thrived under pressure and refused to surrender in the face of impossible challenges. Now, as they faced their greatest test, the galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their unshakable belief that any problem could be solved, any enemy could be defeated, and any challenge could be overcome. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and when the unknown threat from beyond the galaxy finally arrived, it would find not a collection of frightened, divided species, but a united civilization ready to defend everything they had built together. Humanity had come home to the galaxy at last, and they had brought with them the one thing that no enemy could defeat: hope. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with the quiet conversations of 200 species. Light from 3 suns poured through the crystal dome above, casting rainbows across the polished stone floor. At the center of the chamber stood Ambassador Gray, his pale blue skin glistening with nervous sweat. Gray's 4-fingered hands trembled as he gripped the speaking podium. The chamber fell silent. This was not the confident diplomat who had represented the Lumari people for 15 cycles. This was a broken man. Honored representatives, Gray began, his voice cracking. I come before you today not with proposals or treaties, but with a plea for the very survival of my people. The main display behind him activated, showing images of a beautiful green and blue world, Lumari Prime. Then the images changed. Cities in flames, orbital platforms shattered, refugee ships crowded with frightened civilians. For 3 months, the Vex Armada has blockaded our homeworld. They demand our unconditional surrender. They demand our resources, our territories, and... Gray paused, struggling to maintain composure. And they demand half our population for what they call labor redistribution. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Vex had been expanding their territory for years, but this level of aggression was unprecedented. We have tried diplomatic channels, Gray continued. We have offered fair trade agreements. We have even offered limited territorial concessions. But the Vex commander merely laughed and gave us 30 more days to surrender. The council chairperson, a tall insectoid named Director Click, tapped her ceremonial staff against the floor. Ambassador Gray, the council sympathizes with your situation. However, our non-intervention protocols are clear. The Vex Confederation is a recognized galactic power. Without evidence of specific treaty violations, we cannot authorize military action. Gray's shoulders slumped. We expected this answer, but I had to try. In 26 days, my civilization will either be enslaved or destroyed. From the back of the chamber, a voice called out, I have a question. Heads turned. Standing near the entrance was a stocky figure in a simple gray uniform. Unlike the elegant robes of most representatives, this uniform was functional, almost military in design. The being who wore it had pinkish-brown skin and a covering of short brown hair on top of its head. Director Click seemed annoyed by the interruption. The human observer has not been recognized by the chair. The human stepped forward anyway. My name is Jack Wilson, representing Earth. Ambassador Gray, you said you've tried diplomatic channels. Have you requested direct assistance from individual worlds rather than council action? Gray blinked his large eyes in confusion. The council is the proper channel for— Yes, I understand protocol, the human interrupted. But my question is simple. Have you asked anyone else for help? No, Gray admitted. The Vex fleet consists of 15 capital ships and supporting vessels. No single world could possibly— Earth will help, Jack said simply. The chamber erupted in voices. Director Click banged her staff repeatedly. This is highly irregular. Observer Wilson, Earth has only had observer status for 5 years. You cannot make such offers in this chamber. Jack shrugged. I just did. If the Lumari wish to formally request Earth's assistance, we will respond. An elegant reptilian delegate rose from her seat. The human speaks nonsense. Their world is barely past primitive spaceflight. They have only 3 colony worlds while the Vex control 27 systems. Ambassador Sith speaks truth, added another delegate. Humans come from a death world with crushing gravity and extreme weather. This makes them naturally aggressive and impulsive. They do not understand galactic politics. Jack didn't seem bothered by these criticisms. He looked directly at Gray. Ambassador, my government authorized me to offer assistance before I came to this session. We've been monitoring the situation. A Lumari trade ship visited Earth last year. We liked your people. We don't like bullies. Gray looked stunned. But why would Earth risk conflict with the Vex? What do you want in return? Jack's face showed, a brief expression that many in the chamber couldn't interpret, something between amusement and sadness. We don't want anything. That's not how this works. Director Click's voice cut through the noise. Observer Wilson, I must formally warn you that unauthorized military action violates Council guidelines. Earth could lose its observer status and face trade restrictions. Jack nodded politely. Noted, Director. Ambassador Gray, the offer stands. Your call. Gray looked around the chamber at the faces of species who had traded with, taught, and guided the Lumari for centuries. None would meet his gaze. He turned back to the human. Earth's help would be welcomed by the Lumari people, he said formally. Jack nodded once and touched a device on his wrist. Message sent. Earth Defense Force has been activated. Ambassador, can you provide docking coordinates for our ship? It should arrive in about 10 days. Ship? Singular? Someone laughed from across the chamber. The humans think they can challenge a Vex armada with one ship? Jack didn't respond to the mockery. He walked across the chamber to Gray and extended his hand in the human greeting custom. Gray hesitantly reached out, and they clasped hands. I should warn you, Gray whispered. The Vex are notorious for their technological superiority and ruthlessness. Jack smiled slightly. Yeah, we read the reports. Don't worry too much. After exchanging contact information, Jack turned to leave. Director Click called after him. Observer Wilson, the Council formally requests information about what kind of intervention Earth is planning. Jack paused at the doorway. You'll get a full report after the mission, Director. But I can tell you we're sending the Thunderchild. The name meant nothing to most delegates, but a few who had studied human defense systems stirred uncomfortably. The vessel powered by the experimental reactor? Asked a technological specialist from the marital technocracy. That ship violates at least 7 safety guidelines established by the Council. As you frequently remind us, Jack replied with a polite nod. Good day, representatives. After the human left, the chamber filled with urgent conversations. Gray found himself surrounded by delegates, some offering sympathy, others warning him about the dangers of human involvement. They evolved on a world with twice the gravity of most habitable planets, one advisor told him. Their bones and muscles are unnaturally dense and strong. Their atmosphere is toxic by our standards, added another. They breathe reactive oxygen that would damage most species' tissues. Their history is filled with warfare, a historian noted. They united their planet less than 100 years ago after countless conflicts. Ambassador Sith pulled Gray aside. My friend, I understand your desperation, but humans are dangerous. Not malicious, perhaps, but unpredictable. Their ship designs prioritize power over safety. Their tactics defy conventional doctrine. Gray looked at them all with newfound determination. The Vex gave us two choices, slavery or extinction. The humans just gave us a third option. I choose that one. As Gray left the chamber, a message chimed on his communication device. It contained just 4 words from Earth Command. Help is on the way. For the first time in months, Gray felt something unexpected. Hope. Admiral Tom Stone stood at the viewport of Earth Orbital Command, watching the massive shape of the Thunderchild as it prepared for departure. At 52, Stone had seen humanity go from a single planet species to a minor galactic power. His weathered face and gray-streaked hair showed the stress of those decades. How soon can we launch? He asked without turning around. Commander Lisa Park consulted her tablet. Final preparations will be complete in 6 hours, sir. Captain Miller reports all systems green. Stone nodded. And what's the reaction from the rest of the galaxy? Exactly what you'd expect. 17 formal protests from council members, 3 warnings about diplomatic consequences, and 5 requests for technology sharing agreements, just in case we succeed. Stone finally turned from the viewport, a small smile on his face. Amazing how many friends you make when you might do something useful. The Admiral walked to the central command table where a holographic display showed the Lumari system and the Vex blockade. 15 red triangles surrounded a blue sphere. 15 Vex warships against a peaceful world with minimal defenses. This won't be easy, Stone said. The Vex have numbers and position. We have... What exactly? Commander Park smiled. We have the Thunderchild, sir, and we have Captain Miller. 2 decks below the bridge of the Thunderchild, Captain Robert Miller inspected the ship's main reactor room. At 45, Miller was considered young for such an important command, but his experience in Earth's unification conflicts had marked him as a natural leader. Talk to me, Reed, he said to the ship's chief engineer. Will she hold together? Engineer. Alex Reed didn't look up from the complex display showing power flows through the ship's systems. Reed was 30, thin, with quick hands that never seemed to stop moving. Conventional wisdom says no, Reed replied. But conventional wisdom doesn't understand this power system. The heart of the Thunderchild was its experimental reactor, a system that didn't just generate energy, but manipulated the fundamental forces that held reality together. Most galactic powers used safe, stable antimatter reactors. Humans had gone a different direction. The Council Tech inspectors called it recklessly dangerous, Miller said with a hint of pride. Reed laughed. They also called it impossible. Then we built it anyway. Miller liked Reed. The engineer understood the ship better than anyone, even the designers back on Earth. Where others saw danger in the pulsing blue light of the core, Reed saw possibilities. Can we push it beyond standard limits if we need to? Miller asked quietly. Reed finally looked up, eyes serious. The official answer is no. My answer is, probably. But there would be consequences. Miller nodded. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. On the bridge, the command crew prepared for departure. Navigation Officer Jane West plotted the fastest course to the Lumari system. Weapons Specialist Tom Clark ran final checks on the ship's unconventional armaments. Communications. Officer David Green monitored the flood of incoming messages. Another warning from the marital technocracy, Green announced. They say our reactor will destabilize local space and demand we power down. Miller settled into the captain's chair. Send our standard response. Green nodded and transmitted the carefully worded message that essentially said, in diplomatic language, noted, proceeding anyway. Miller addressed the bridge crew. I know you've all read the mission briefing. 15 Vex ships against our 1. They have superior numbers. They have position. They have experience. He paused, looking at each crew member in turn. What they don't have is a good reason to fight. They're bullies picking on a peaceful species. We're going to show them that was a mistake. Miller turned to his first officer. Commander Adams, are all departments ready? Commander Ben Adams nodded. All systems report ready, Captain. The crew is at battle stations. Good. Navigation, begin departure sequence. As the massive engines of the Thunderchild powered up, the ship's AI system announced, "Warning, power levels exceeding Council safety guidelines by 35%. Miller exchanged a glance with Adams. Note the warning in the log. Continue departure. The great ship pulled away from Earth Orbital Command, its unusual engines glowing with blue-white energy that seemed to bend the space around it. In his private quarters, Ambassador Gray watched in fascination as the human ship approached the Lumari homeworld 7 days later. He had expected to wait 10 days for Earth's help to arrive, but somehow the ship had made the journey faster than any vessel he knew could travel. The Thunderchild was unlike any ship Gray had seen before. Where most advanced species built sleek, elegant vessels with smooth lines, the human ship was angular and functional. It bristled with sensors and weapon systems that seemed almost haphazardly attached. The hull was painted dark gray with minimal markings, just the ship's name and Earth Defense Force in simple letters. Gray's communication device chimed. Ambassador, this is Captain Miller of the EDF Thunderchild. We've arrived ahead of schedule and would like to discuss strategy. Gray hurried to the small spaceport where he kept his diplomatic shuttle. Within an hour, he was approaching the human vessel. Up close, it looked even more imposing, nearly twice the size he had expected, with visible damage to its hull plates that appeared to have been hastily repaired. When Gray's shuttle docked, he was met by a human female in a gray uniform. Ambassador. Gray? I'm Commander Adams, First Officer. Welcome aboard the Thunderchild. Gray followed Adams through corridors filled with busy crew members. Unlike the automated ships of most advanced species, the human vessel seemed to require many hands to operate. Each person they passed nodded respectfully to the ambassador. Your ship is not what I expected, Gray admitted as they walked. Adams smiled. We get that a lot. The Thunderchild was built for function, not appearance. They arrived at a conference room where Captain Miller waited with several officers. The captain stood and extended his hand in the human greeting custom. Ambassador, Gray, welcome aboard. We've been studying the situation. It's not good, but it's not hopeless either. Gray shook the offered hand. Captain Miller, my people are grateful for Earth's assistance, but I must be honest. I don't understand how one ship, even your Thunderchild, can stand against 15 Vex warships. Miller gestured for Gray to sit. Numbers aren't everything. Ambassador, may I introduce my team? Commander Adams you've met. This is Navigation Officer West, Weapons Specialist Clark, and Engineer Reed. Engineer Reed spoke up. We've been analyzing the Vex fleet from long-range scans. Their technology is impressive but predictable. Standard antimatter power cores, conventional shield geometries. Gray was confused. Is that important? Reed's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Very. It means they'll respond to our technology in predictable ways. They've never encountered a power system like ours. Captain Miller pointed to a display showing the blockade pattern. The Vex have set up a standard containment formation. They're not expecting resistance, which gives us an advantage. What exactly is your plan? Gray asked. Miller's face grew serious. First, we attempt diplomatic contact. Offer them a chance to withdraw. Gray shook his head. They won't listen. They refused all previous attempts. I know, Miller said. But we always offer peace first. It's our way. When they refuse, and they will, we'll demonstrate why that was a mistake. As if on cue, an alarm sounded. Communications Officer Green's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we're being hailed by the Vex command ship. Their leader demands we identify ourselves and state our purpose. Miller stood. Right on schedule. Ambassador Gray, would you join me on the bridge? It's time to introduce ourselves to the neighborhood bully. For the first time since the blockade began, Gray felt something other than despair. These humans, with their strange ship and confident manner, actually believed they could win. Looking at their determined faces, Gray began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were right. The bridge of the Thunderchild hummed with tense energy as Captain Miller took his command chair. Ambassador Gray stood nearby, trying not to show his nervousness. "Put the Vex commander on screen," Miller ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing a stern-faced being with dark purple skin and a crest of bony ridges where hair would be on a human. The Vex commander wore an elaborate uniform covered with medals and insignia. "I am Supreme Commander Drac of the Vex Confederation," the alien announced. "Your vessel is unauthorized in this space. Identify yourself immediately." Miller leaned forward slightly. "I'm Captain Robert Miller of the Earth Defense Force vessel Thunderchild. We're here at the request of the Lumari government to address the blockade situation." Drac's eyes narrowed. "Earth? The Death World colony? This matter does not concern your primitive species. Depart immediately or face destruction." Miller's expression didn't change. "Commander Drac, I'm authorized to offer you a chance to withdraw your forces peacefully. The Lumari are under Earth's protection now." A harsh sound came from Drac, something like laughter. "One ship against 15? Your species is even more foolish than reported. We have studied your vessel. It violates basic safety protocols and would not survive first contact with our weapons." Ambassador Gray stepped forward, unable to contain himself. "Commander Drac, please reconsider. We can return to negotiations." "Silence," Drac snapped. "Your time for negotiations is over. You will surrender as planned." He turned his attention back to Miller. "Human, you have 1 hour to leave this system. After that, we will consider your ship hostile and respond accordingly." The screen went dark. Gray turned to Miller with panic in his eyes. "Captain, he's not bluffing. The Vex are known for their military prowess." Miller nodded calmly. "I believe you. But first impressions are important, and I think it's time we made ours." He turned to his communications officer. "Green, open a channel to all Lumari ships in the area." "Channel open, sir." "This is Captain Miller of the Thunderchild. Any Lumari vessels, please identify yourselves." After a moment of static, a tired voice responded. "This is Scholar Blue of the Lumari Defense Force. We have 3 ships still operational, but our weapons are nearly depleted." "Scholar Blue, please hold your position. We're going to demonstrate something to our Vex friends." Miller turned to his weapons specialist. "Clark, target the 2 Vex scout ships on the blockade's perimeter. Precision strike, engines only." Clark's fingers danced across his console. "Targets acquired, sir. Ready on your command." Miller looked at Engineer Reed. "Are we in position for minimal power signature?" Reed nodded from the engineering station. "Yes, Captain. They'll never see it coming." Miller took a deep breath. "Fire." From the outside, the Thunderchild showed no visible signs of weapons charging. No energy buildup, no glowing emitters. 2 nearly invisible distortions in space shot from the ship, covering the vast distance to the Vex scout ships in seconds. On the bridge displays, they watched as the engines of both Vex vessels suddenly went dark. The ships began to drift, their running lights flickering. Scholar Blue's voice came through, filled with astonishment. "What did you do to them?" "Targeted electromagnetic pulse," Miller explained. "We disabled their engines without harming the crews." Ambassador Gray stared at the displays in disbelief. "I've never seen weapons with that precision." Engineer Reed smiled slightly. "That's because they're not conventional weapons. Our ship's power system allows us to create localized space-time distortions that carry an electromagnetic charge." "In simple terms," Commander Adams added, seeing Gray's confusion, "we can reach out and turn off their systems without destroying the ships." The communications panel lit up. "Captain, Commander Drac is hailing us. He sounds upset." "Put him through," Miller said. Drac's face appeared on screen, his purple skin now darker with rage. "What have you done? This act of aggression will not stand." Miller's voice remained calm. "It wasn't aggression, Commander. It was a demonstration. Your scout ships are disabled but intact. The crews are unharmed. This was a warning shot. You? Teresa, I do dare, Miller interrupted. Here's our position. The Lumari are now under Earth's protection. Your blockade will end, and you will withdraw from this system. In return, no further action will be taken against your fleet. Drax's expression twisted with fury. You have just signed your death warrant, human. No one challenges the Vex Confederation and survives. The transmission cut off abruptly. Gray turned to Miller. Captain, they're mobilizing their main battle fleet. You've provoked them. Miller nodded. That was the plan. Commander Adams, battle stations. Reed, prepare for full power. To defensive systems. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as crew members prepared for combat. Gray watched in amazement at how calmly these humans faced the coming storm. Captain, Reed called from the engineering station. I've been analyzing the local space. Conditions. There's something interesting happening with our power core. Miller moved to Reed's station. Explain. Reed pointed to complex readings on the display. The unique radiation from Lumari's sun is interacting with our core in unexpected ways. It's actually enhancing our power output by nearly 30%. Is it dangerous? Miller asked. Quite the opposite. It's stabilizing the reaction. We could push the system harder than we've ever attempted before. Miller studied the readings. Could we use that to our advantage? Reed's eyes lit up. Definitely. I could reconfigure the defensive systems to create larger distortion fields, maybe even enough to disrupt their entire formation at once. Do it, Miller ordered. As Reed hurried off to make the adjustments, Miller returned to the command chair. Ambassador Gray approached hesitantly. Captain Miller, I don't understand. You deliberately provoked the Vex when you're outnumbered 15-1. Why? Miller's eyes remained on the tactical display. Because sometimes the best defense is a good offense. The Vex expected us to be intimidated by their numbers. When we weren't, we disrupted their psychological advantage. But they're still stronger, Gray insisted. Numbers aren't everything, Ambassador. The Vex fight by the book, standard tactics, standard formations. They excel at overwhelming weaker opponents who play by the same rules. And you don't play by those rules, Gray realized. Miller smiled slightly. Humans learned warfare the hard way, on our death world, as you call it. For thousands of years we fought each other. Ocean warfare, air combat, guerrilla tactics. We've tried it all. The Vex have a doctrine. We have experience. On the main screen, the Vex fleet was changing formation, moving from a blockade pattern to an attack configuration. They're coming, Commander Adams announced. Miller nodded. As expected. Navigation, bring us around to heading 045. Clark, target their command ship's communication array. Non-destructive hit only. As the crew carried out their orders, Gray watched with growing hope. These humans were unlike any species he had encountered. Where others saw the Vex's superior numbers and technology as unbeatable, the humans saw only a puzzle to be solved. The Thunderchild moved with surprising speed for such a large vessel, its unusual engines glowing brighter as it accelerated toward the approaching Vex fleet. All hands, Miller's voice rang through the ship. Prepare for combat. This is what we trained for. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for the Lumari people. As the distance between the ships rapidly closed, Engineer Reed returned to the bridge, slightly out of breath. Modifications complete, Captain. The power core is running at 115% capacity. Stable for now. Miller nodded. Good work, Reed. Ambassador Gray gripped a nearby railing as the reality of the situation hit him. One Earth ship was about to engage 15 Vex warships in direct combat. By all logic, they should be running, not advancing. Are we really going to attack them head-on? Gray asked, unable to hide his fear. Miller turned to the ambassador with a confident smile. Not exactly. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. The 15 Vex warships advanced in perfect formation. Their dark purple hulls absorbed light rather than reflected it, making them look like moving shadows against the stars. On the Thunderchild's main screen, the enemy vessels appeared as a wall of darkness heading straight for them. "They're using the Carvis assault pattern," reported weapons specialist Clark. "Standard Vex tactic against a single opponent." Captain Miller nodded. "As expected. Navigation, execute Maneuver Alpha." To Ambassador Gray's surprise, the Thunderchild didn't turn to flee or move to the side. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the center of the Vex formation. "Captain, what are you doing?" Gray couldn't keep the panic from his voice. "You're heading straight for their strongest point." "Exactly," Miller replied calmly. "It's the last thing they expect." On the tactical display, the distance between ships closed rapidly. The Vex fleet began to adjust their formation, spreading out to create a killing pocket that would catch the human ship in crossfire. "They're charging weapons," Clark announced. "Defensive systems ready," Commander Adams reported. Engineer Reed's fingers flew across his console. "Power core stable at 120%, ready for phase shift on your command." Miller's eyes never left the main screen. "Wait for it. Wait." He paused until the Vex ships were just seconds away from firing range. "Now Reed." Reed pressed a series of commands. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily as power redirected throughout the ship. A strange vibration ran through the deck plates. "What's happening?" Gray asked, gripping a railing for support. No one answered. All eyes were fixed on the main screen as the Thunderchild entered the heart of the Vex formation. Gray expected to see energy weapons firing, explosions as the human ship was torn apart. Instead, something extraordinary happened. A blue-white sphere of energy expanded from the Thunderchild in all directions. It wasn't a weapon blast or a shield. It looked almost like a ripple in space itself. As it touched each Vex ship, their lights flickered and weapons ports closed automatically. "Phase shift successful," Reed reported, excitement in his voice. "Their targeting systems are offline. Estimated recovery time, 3 minutes. Miller didn't waste a second. "Clark, targeted strikes on their main weapons arrays. Navigation, bring us around for maneuver beta." The Thunderchild pivoted with surprising agility for such a large vessel. Now, instead of charging through the formation, it began weaving between the confused Vex ships. Precision strikes disabled weapon systems on 3 vessels before the Vex could react. "They're trying to regroup," Adams reported. 2 ships at our stern are coming back online." "I see them," Miller responded. "Reed, status of the power core?" Reed checked his readings. "Still stable at 120%, but we can't maintain this output for more than 10 more minutes." Miller nodded. "We won't need that long. Clark, defensive countermeasures on our stern. Navigation, take us through Vector 227. The Thunderchild accelerated again, this time on a course that would take it between 2 of the largest Vex battleships. As energy weapons from the recovering Vex ships began firing, the human vessel released a cloud of tiny metallic objects from its rear sections. "What are those?" Gray asked, pointing at the small objects on the tactical display. "Old Earth naval tactic," Adams explained. "Chaff, simple metal fragments that confuse enemy targeting systems." The simple approach worked brilliantly. Vex, energy weapons fired but struck the chaff cloud instead of the Thunderchild. For all their advanced technology, the Vex had never encountered such a basic defensive tactic. Meanwhile, the Thunderchild continued its attack run, disabling weapons and engines on the 2 largest battleships as it passed between them. Now 7 of the 15 Vex ships were effectively removed from the battle. "Captain," Clark called. "Out. 3 Vex cruisers are breaking formation. They're targeting the Lumari defense vessels." Miller frowned. "Trying to eliminate civilian targets. Typical bully behavior." He turned to navigation. "Intercept course. Maximum speed." The Thunderchild changed direction sharply, racing to place itself between the Vex cruisers and the defenseless Lumari ships. The maneuver would expose their most vulnerable sections to the remaining Vex vessels. "Sir," Adams warned, "this will put us in crossfire from 5 different directions." "I'm aware, Commander. Reed, can we manage another phase shift?" Reed shook his head. "Not a full one, but I could create a directional burst like a shield wall on our port side." "Do it," Miller ordered. As the Thunderchild moved to protect the Lumari vessels, Energy weapons from multiple Vex ships converged on their position. The directional shield Reed created absorbed most of the impacts, but the ship shuddered violently as some blasts broke through. Damage to decks 5 through 8, reported Commander Adams. Power fluctuations in the starboard sections. Despite the damage, the Thunderchild continued its protective maneuver, placing itself directly in harm's way. More enemy fire pounded against the human vessel's hull. "Power core destabilizing," Reed called out, his voice tense. "We're exceeding safe operational parameters." Miller gripped the arms of his command chair. "Can you stabilize it?" Reed's hands moved frantically across his console. "Not conventionally. There's only one option left, but it's never been tested outside simulation." "What option?" Miller demanded. "Emergency Protocol Omega," Reed replied. "A controlled overload of the core. It would create a massive phase shift, enough to disable every ship in the area." "Would it destroy the Vex fleet?" Miller asked. Reed shook his head. "No, just disable them completely for about 30 minutes, but there's a catch. We'd lose all power too. We'd be dead in space until auxiliary systems came back online." Another blast rocked the ship, harder this time. Warning lights flashed across multiple stations. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Adams reported. "Emergency containment activated." Miller made his decision. "Do it, Reed. Initiate Protocol Omega." Reed entered a complex series of commands, then placed his palm on a scanner for final authorization. "Protocol Omega initiated. Core overload in 30 seconds. Miller opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, brace for power loss. Emergency. Systems only." Ambassador Gray watched in fear and fascination as the lighting throughout the bridge changed to a deep blue. The deck vibrated with increasing intensity. 10 seconds to overload," Reed announced. "Brace yourselves." Gray gripped the nearest secure handhold with all 4 of his hands. Around him, the human crew secured themselves at their stations, faces tense but determined. 3, 2, 1. The world seemed to stop for a moment. Gray felt a strange sensation, as if gravity itself hesitated. Then a blinding blue-white light filled the bridge, so intense that Gray had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, the bridge was dark except for faint emergency lighting. All systems appeared to be offline. Through the viewport, Gray could see that the Vex ships were similarly dark, drifting aimlessly in space. Did it work?" Gray asked into the silence. Captain Miller's voice came from the darkness. "See for yourself, Ambassador." As Gray's eyes adjusted, he could make out the tactical display, now running on auxiliary power. It showed all 15 Vex warships completely powerless, floating helplessly in space. "By the Ancient Ones," Gray whispered. "You did it. You defeated the entire Vex fleet without destroying a single ship." Miller stood carefully in the low gravity of the powered-down vessel. "That was the plan, Ambassador. Engineer Reed made it possible." Reed checked readings on a handheld device. "Auxiliary power will be online in 10 minutes. Main systems in 30. The Vex ships will take longer to recover. Their power systems are more complex and less robust than ours." Gray looked at the humans with new understanding. These Deathworlders could have easily destroyed the Vex fleet. They had the power. But instead, they chose precision over destruction, protection over vengeance. "Captain Miller," Scholar Blue's voice came through on the emergency communication system. "The Lumari Defense Force stands ready to assist. What are your orders?" Miller smiled in the dim light. "Have your ships secure the disabled Vex vessels. When they wake up, I want to have a very serious conversation with Commander Drack about the future of this system." As the emergency lights brightened slightly, Gray saw something he hadn't noticed before. The human crew was exhausted. Many showed minor injuries from the battle. Their uniforms were stained with sweat. Yet not one complained or sought rest. "Why?" Gray asked suddenly. "Why risk so much for a species you barely know?" Miller's tired face showed a simple, genuine smile. "Because it was the right thing to do, Ambassador. On Earth we have a saying, The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good people do nothing. We chose to do something. Gray nodded slowly, understanding the humans a little better now. These creatures from a harsh world had developed not just physical strength and advanced technology, but something perhaps more valuable, a moral strength that drove them to protect others even at great risk to themselves. As auxiliary power began to return to the ship, Gray looked out at the stars and the disabled Vex fleet. For the first time in months, the future of his people seemed bright again, thanks to dangerous Deathworlders who had answered their call for help. 3 days after the battle, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with excited conversations. News of the Thunderchild's victory had spread throughout the galaxy, causing both concern and fascination. The chamber was more crowded than usual, with representatives from dozens of species who normally showed little interest in council proceedings. At the center of the chamber stood Ambassador Gray, looking more confident than he had in months. Beside him stood Captain Miller, still wearing his Earth Defense Force uniform despite suggestions that he dress more formally for the occasion. Director Click called the session to order with 3 sharp taps of her ceremonial staff. This emergency session will address the recent military action in the Lumari system. Ambassador Gray, please present your report. Gray stepped forward. Honored representatives, I am pleased to inform the Council that the blockade of Lumari Prime has ended. The Vex fleet has withdrawn from our system, and Commander Drac has signed a formal non-aggression treaty. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Director Click raised a limb for silence. And what of the human intervention? We received reports of unauthorized military action. Before Gray could answer, a new figure approached the speaking platform. Commander Drac of the Vex. His once pristine uniform now lacked several medals, suggesting a demotion. The Vex Confederation wishes to address this matter, Drac announced, his voice lacking its former arrogance. Director Click nodded. The Council recognizes Commander Drac. Drac straightened his posture. The Vex Confederation withdraws its complaint against Earth's intervention. Our internal investigation has confirmed that our blockade of Lumari Prime violated 3 interstellar treaties. The humans, he paused, glancing at Miller, responded to legitimate distress signals with appropriate force. The chamber erupted in surprised conversations. The Vex never admitted wrongdoing. When order was restored, Director Click turned to Captain Miller. Captain, the Council would like to understand the nature of your intervention. Reports suggest your single vessel engaged 15 Vex warships. How is this possible? Miller stepped forward. Director, with respect, most of that information is classified by Earth Defense Force. What I can tell you is that we employed targeted, non-lethal methods to neutralize the Vex fleet. No ships were destroyed. No lives were lost. A technological specialist from the marital technocracy rose from her seat. But your vessel's power systems violate safety protocols. Our sensors detected energy fluctuations that could have destabilized the entire sector. Engineer Reed, who had been standing quietly behind Miller, stepped forward. May I address this concern, Captain? Miller nodded, and Reed approached the platform. I'm Engineer Alex Reed of the Thunderchild. The power fluctuations you detected were contained within our ship's specialized shielding. At no point was the sector at risk. The marital representative wasn't satisfied. But how can we verify this? The technology you're using is unlike anything. In our records, Reed smiled slightly. That's because we developed it independently. Earth was isolated for much of its technological development. We found different solutions to similar problems. Director Click tapped her staff again. The Council's primary concern is safety. Can Earth guarantee that these unusual power systems won't pose a risk to other worlds? Miller rejoined the conversation. Earth is preparing a detailed report on our safety protocols. We're also willing to share certain aspects of our technology with the Council's Safety Commission. This announcement caused another stir in the chamber. Earth had never before offered to share its advanced technology. Ambassador Gray stepped forward again. If I may add, Director, the Lumari have already begun working with Earth engineers to understand their power systems. We can confirm they are safe when properly managed. The next hour involved detailed questions about the battle and its aftermath. Captain Miller explained how the Thunderchild had disabled the Vex ships without destroying them, and how this demonstration of power had convinced Commander Drack to negotiate. Finally, Director Click addressed the chamber. The Council will take all this information under advisement. For now, we recognize the legitimate defense of the Lumari people and withdraw our objection to Earth's intervention. As the formal session ended, representatives gathered in smaller groups. Many approached Miller and Reed with questions or offers of technological exchange. Others spoke with Gray about establishing closer ties with both Lumari and Earth. In a quiet corner of the chamber, Miller found a moment alone with Gray. "What happens now, Ambassador?" Miller asked. Gray's large eyes showed genuine warmth. "My people have already begun the recovery process. Without the Vex threat, we can rebuild. Earth's assistance has been more generous than we expected." Miller nodded. "The engineers we're leaving behind should help you understand some of our technology. Not the weapons, of course, but the power systems could transform your world." "That's not what I meant," Gray said. "Your people asked for nothing in return. No territories, no resources, no political alliance, just friendship." Miller smiled. "That's how we prefer to operate. Friendships last longer than forced alliances." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of 3 representatives from different species. The leader, a tall being with silvery skin, addressed Miller directly. "Captain, I represent the Telos Confederation. We've observed your ship's capabilities with great interest. Would your government consider a defensive agreement with our worlds? We've had our own troubles with aggressive neighbors." Before Miller could answer, similar offers came from the other representatives. Word was spreading fast. Earth might be small and new to the galactic community, but it was becoming known as a powerful friend to have. Miller handled the requests diplomatically. "I'll forward all proposals to Earth Command, but I should clarify, we don't provide military services. For payment, we respond to legitimate needs case by case." After the representatives left, Gray looked at Miller with curiosity. "You could have secured valuable alliances just now. Why hesitate?" Miller's expression grew serious. "Because that's not who we are, Ambassador. The moment we start deploying our ships for political gain, we become just another power player. Earth has a different vision for its role in the galaxy." Across the chamber, Engineer Reed was deep in conversation with Lumari scientists. He was explaining with enthusiastic hand gestures how the Thunderchild's power core worked. The Lumari listened with fascination. "Your engineer seems eager to share knowledge," Gray observed. Miller nodded. "Reed believes technology should help people, not control them. He's explaining enough for your scientists to develop their own version of our power systems, something suited to Lumari needs." Gray was silent for a moment. "You know, Captain, when I first met humans, I was told your species evolved on a death world, a planet so harsh that it produced naturally aggressive beings. I was warned that this made you dangerous." "And now?" Miller asked. "Now I understand that your harsh world didn't just make you strong. It taught you compassion. You know what it means to struggle, so you help others who struggle. You've faced your own threats, so you stand against threats to others." Gray extended all 4 of his hands in a traditional Lumari gesture of deep respect. "My people will not forget what Earth has done." As they prepared to leave the council chamber, a message arrived for Miller from Earth Command. He read it quickly, then smiled. "Good news?" asked Gray. "The best kind," Miller replied. "The Thunderchild has new orders. We're to remain in this sector for 3 months as part of a goodwill tour. Apparently several worlds have requested visits from an Earth vessel." "Including Lumari Prime, I hope," Gray said. "Especially Lumari Prime," Miller confirmed. "Engineer Reed will be pleased. He's been talking about studying your sun's unusual radiation pattern since we arrived." As they walked toward the docking area where the Thunderchild waited, Miller noticed how differently other species now looked at him and his crew. Where once there had been suspicion or dismissal of the primitive Deathworlders, now there was curiosity and respect. The news was spreading throughout the galaxy. If you faced an impossible threat, if the odds were overwhelmingly against you, if even the Galactic Council couldn't help, there was a world of beings who would answer your call. They came from a planet harsher than most could imagine. Their ships bent the rules of what most considered possible. Their methods defied conventional doctrine. And most importantly, when a foreigner begged for help, these dangerous Deathworlders answered, not for profit or power, but because they believed it was right. For many threatened species across the galaxy, this was the most welcome news they had heard in centuries.